Before the Leather Archives and Museum was established in the early 1990s, our history was spread out all over the country. Today, it's a crucial time for us to provide a permanent home for our history. With your investment, we can take advantage of that opportunity and assure that our history is made available to future generations. The Leather Archives and Museum, located in Chicago and serving the world. It's been around for about 12 years now, and we preserve the history of BDSM, leather, kink, fetish, alternative sexuality, whatever term you want to use. We preserve that here.
Not existent would be terrible, because I think without history and without a sense of belonging, we're just a bunch of freaks. But with the history and the timeline we have, I think we are a meaningful segment of society. Well, I guess it would be the history of all the clubs that were there and how different the clubs were and how clubs have changed and how bars have changed and what bars and artists and so forth have led to where we are today, to the acceptance of it. Don't forget, the leather community was even shunned by the gay community for many, many years, and that's developing and passing away. And I think I would show the young people that what has all happened and what our timeline is and how we're going up into the future.
Well, if you haven't been to the Leather Archives, you should most definitely come up here and at least take a tour of the place. The stuff that you'll see will just be amazing. The people that you meet are very knowledgeable about anything and everything under the sun. You can ask any question you want and not feel ashamed or embarrassed by anything, and it's just a wonderful place to come and get all the questions that you could possibly have answered. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the leather history, at least the timeline, is online for the Leather Archives, so anybody has access to that, which for the most part was what most people would want to use the archives for.
The archives is extremely important. We're sitting here in DC tonight, and not far from where we are is the National Mall. And there are 3 miles of museums down there, most notably the Smithsonian, which controls most of them. And the Smithsonian is always referred to as our nation's attic. And I think that the Leather Archives serves our community in the same way, in the fact that it is becoming our attic. And it is preserving our history, our memorabilia, our club history, the history of our title holders, the history of our entire community. And in the future, people will be going to the Leather Archives like they go to the Smithsonian to research the art of our community, the crafts of our community, the history of our community, the documentation of our community. And without the archives, our entire history and our creativity would be lost.
When I approached 40, I began to think of friends and people that I had met over the years. And what became very painfully obvious to me was the vast majority of my friends that I had at the time, and thankfully still have many of, were either under or close to 30 or somewhere on the other side of 50. All of the friends that I had around my age group, my peers, were gone. And you want to talk about an episode of survivor guilt, that was quite a ride. It really affected me in many ways, on many levels. And then, today you hear about, the transitioning, the old guard, new guard, whatever guard it is, that people want to call it. And in many ways, the old guard that was imparting the things that they knew and the things that, the traditions that they had preserved that were passed on to them, the generation that they had to pass it on to disappeared.
Grounding is a big thing to me. I think I don't think you should be involved in leather if you don't know who you are. And I think when I think about the leather archives, I think that you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And that's grounding to me. That's roots. That's value of what's important and what's superficial. And I found that in the people that I have met in leather. We lost a lot of young people, and we wanted to remember them. Clubs were wiped out, and clubs are certainly strength in the leather community, no question. And we wanted to remember those individuals. We wanted to know what they were about. And I gained strength in that myself. And I think if you are leather, whatever category, whatever title you may have, you have strength. Strength, that's what it's about. Because that's what human beings are about. Clubs are what are the strength. And I hope they never forget that they are the strength, because they are.
It's really a shame. A lot of the historic photographs and artwork from our people have been destroyed and lost over the years. We've lost people with collections, and their families come in and say, "Oh, it's trash," and throw it away or burn it, including a whole collection of George Platt Lyon's original photographs that I know of were burned from family members when they thought all this stuff was dirty. The Archives actually has some George Platt Lyon stuff, and along with many other artists. It's a great collection. I just like to come here and look at them, because it's so much of what's going on today is based on what was going on back then. You know, when you lose people, or you lose friends, or you lose relatives, and you go back and you look at their pictures and their memories, you really didn't lose them, because they're all still there, and they're all written down in the archives and in people's memories and the writings and the books and the photographs. And I just find that fascinating.
There have been changes in the leather community since when I first came out in it, and although I came out in a strange way, being at that time a straight female, and coming out through the gay male community, the head community has caught up a lot to the gay community, in part because of the proliferation of the events, some of them gay only, some pansexual, and the mixing of the cultures has allowed a lot of the learning and the history of the gay community to have been passed on to the head community as well, and the pansexual community. We're all in this together, and we're all sharing our knowledge to make things easier for the next generation.
One of the major things I remember from the archives that struck me was the newspaper articles from the early days, in the 50s and the 60s. I think it's extremely important. The archives are definitely a resource for those of us who are into the leather fetish community to see where our history comes from. It's an amazing place where you can go and see those who have come before us and what they have done to allow us to be what we are today. It would matter because you can't go forward until you know where you've come from. And that's what the archive stands for, our history and where we came from.
It is important to leave something for generations to come, so they may know something of our lives. Just as important for us to have knowledge of what the generations before us went through to make all this possible. It will be a different world for them than it is for us. It is not possible for us as individuals to pass on our memory, but as a community, through the Leather Archives, we have the ability to provide that knowledge for the future generations. By supporting the archives financially, all of us can provide the means for that to happen. History is the prologue to the future. Please, contribute as much as your ability will permit. Thank you.
Let your daddy take you home. Let your